This is the Besotted Pride of West London podcast. And here we are a couple of days before the Tottenham game, and it's all going off in Brentford land. Finally, the bomb has landed. The Ivan Toney bomb, the one that we knew was coming at some stage, but it's almost like the planes had been circling around the new Griffin Park era for months and months and months and months. I mean, I don't know how much they had, but so much petrol in that plane, and it didn't run out. And eventually, boom, the bomb was dropped on us yesterday afternoon. Ivan Toney has been banned from all football for 8 months, and that's had reverberations in and around our club. My name is Billy Grant, and I'm sitting here in the virtual joint with my man Laney, because we're going to talk about maybe a little bit of this. We've got the Spurs game on Saturday. We've got all sorts of stuff going on. Laney, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, it'll be good to sort of draw a line underneath Ivan Toney incident for a few hours at least on Saturday and get on with the football. But yeah, for the moment, there's only one story in town, isn't there?
That's definitely just one story in town, as they say. And I mean, Ivan Toney, God blimey. I mean, I'll tell you something, just going back to let's just switch it off a little bit, lady. I've got to tell you something as well, which you might relate to as well. It's talk about old school. I just got to hold this up here to the camera, as you can see. I mean, I was the other day, I was going through my shed. As I say, my garden shed is bigger than this. My garden shed definitely isn't bigger than this anymore, because it's been completely demolished, and I had character in there sort of demolishing the shed and taking stuff down to the skip. And you know, like when you move into a house, you put lots of stuff into the shed saying, I'll tell you so, I'm going to just take care of this maybe in a month or two's time. 15 years later, it's like, oh no. So I've found stuff in there that I didn't even remember existed. I found an old mini disc player. Remember mini discs, lady?
Oh yeah, I used to use them a lot.
Yeah, mini disc player as well. And also I found a load of my old cassettes. Now, for the younger lot out there, they probably weren't even born when cassettes were going. But like I said, my record label used to put out lots of cassettes as well. And so I found a lot of sort of the old test pressings. So what happens is that when you work for a record label, you used to go to make an album or make a single, and then what they do is that the place would give you a cassette for you to go back and have a listen to. So I've got a load of these old test pressing cassettes as well, which is quite mad. People like Chapter and the Verse, of your old Mancunians out there, if you remember them, and old sort of hip hop jazz band as well. But also I dug out memories from our Liverpool trip, lady. I found a Mantronics cassette as well. Are you quite impressed with this? Have a look at this.
That's lovely, mate. That's a lovely thing. Yeah, that's a thing of beauty, mate. I mean, I don't think I've got any I've got lots of 12 inches. I've got Who Is It and Simple Simon, and yeah. That's one of my favourites from like what was it, 83, 84, 85, something like that.
Maybe a bit later than that, yeah, maybe 85, 86, 87. But I tell you what I'm thinking of doing, you see, lady, because I thought I'd bring this up, because I was thinking it's great that we've got all this streaming going on with the Besotted podcast, you know, which is, you know, very new school, but we are quite old school. And, you know, how Besotted started off, we used to start off with our fanzine, used to sell the fanzines on the corner. In fact, I even dug out a load of old fanzines from maybe 10, 15 years ago, in the shed as well. I'm sitting there looking at them like, what's going on, Ron, which is the old Ron Nodes one. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's probably from about 1999. So you've got all these old magazines that we had that used to stand in the corner. But I'm just thinking, tell you something, why can't we, don't we try for once, recording a podcast and putting it on cassette and going onto the corners of the ground and flogging them? Do you think that's a good idea?
You've had some shit ideas in your time, Bill, and that's up there. That's up there with the worst of them. And I'd say, you know what the best thing to do with all that stuff you found?
What's that?
Shove it in the bin, mate. It's worthless.
Listen, you make me feel bad anyway. Listen, but I think I was probably doing that to take my mind off what has been going on and in around New Griffin Park with the Ivan Toney situation, which is really, it's kind of made us sort of really, really confused. I mean, first of all, I'm going to say to you, some two very, very good podcasts you should check out. prideofwest.london. First of all, yesterday, Laney and Ali Malali from Her Game 2, they did an emergency podcast where they talked about the situation with Ivan Toney and what's going to go down. We're going to be having a little clip from that a little bit later. And also, I spoke on TalkSport as well to Darren Bent as well. Like, you know what I'm saying? We were just having a little chat to Darren and also Andy as well, and we had a little chat about the Ivan Toney situation. I was caught a little bit on the spot because I was literally sitting there with my daughter. She had to go in for she had a little bit of an appointment, and I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden the phone rang, said, "It's TalkSport, can you talk now?" So I didn't really have time to prepare my answers as such or think about what I was going to talk about, and they did put me on the spot a little bit, as we said. So we'll be playing a little clip for that later, but if you want to hear to the full podcast, go to prideofwest.london and you can check that out. But Laney, just quickly, just a little, because like I said, we're going to get the Allard in a little bit later, just to talk about the Toney situation. But I just want to know, just quickly, any further thoughts on that? You've had a night to sleep on it.
Yeah, there are a couple of further thoughts, and I mean, when you read through the cited Twitter timeline, there's some excellent observations and some real from the heart reactions to the news from other Brentford fans, and we'll probably read through a few more of those as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we all knew it was coming, so we're not kind of, this isn't a bolt from the blue or anything like that. But what really is a bolt from the blue is, with 2 games to go, I really don't understand why they had to do this before the end of the season. It would have made sense to issue the fine and issue the ban in 10 days' time after we've played the Man City game. It is a bit bonkers, because I always thought that the reason that they're going to delay it so it didn't impact or impinge on this current football season. They made a decision that he was going to be found guilty, but they were going to delay the punishment or the sentencing, for want of a better word, until the season was over and done with. He played, he scored, he contributed to Brentford this season. They were going to let the season run through its entirety, and then they were going to hit him with the punishment as soon as it was finished. It doesn't contaminate a close season, doesn't contaminate next season. It's all kind of like in one shell, and it's all dealt with cleanly. 2 games to go, and the insinuation is they knew something ban was coming, and they sort of asked Brentford not to pick him last week, but against West Ham. But these 2 games just seems, it seems odd. The chances are he may have missed them anyway if the hamstring injury is true, but it just makes it a bit clunky, and I don't really understand that. The other observation, flicking around and reading some of the more intelligent observations, is that a lot of people in the know don't think that this is going to affect Toney's valuation or his chances of going to a big club one little bit. A lot of people think that these big clubs will just look through that because he's just a goal scorer.
I mean, I was thinking about this quite a lot myself, and you're sort of thinking about, his value in the marketplace. There's his value to us, obviously, which is very important, and him not being there is a bit of an issue, to be quite honest with you. But, if we are thinking of moving him on, you look at the situations of people that have done things. It's almost like people kind of like, they do the old, look, keep your nose clean for 6 months, okay, and then we'll bring you back. I'm saying, if you are of value to a football club, the football club will take you on. There have been numerous footballers who have done things which are, and I'm not equating this, but I'm just saying that have done things which you put the question mark on, think, that's a little bit like, that was a little bit stink, as we'd say, what I'm saying? But the football club says, all right, well, we've got a value on them, and that's fine. I mean, look at what happened at Derby County for a prime example, where you've got a lot of players getting really drunk and they've been drove and smashed a car up. Like, I'm saying, the player that they felt had no value because he was on lots of wages as well, Keown, they got rid of him immediately. But the players that they felt had value, all of a sudden they were back in there in contract and they were playing again. So, I think football clubs, when it comes to their assets, they will value their assets and they will do things for them. So I agree with you there to say that I don't think Toney's value has gone down. And I probably equate it to a situation, because we're saying, well, whether or not Ivan Toney, and I'll talk about this later with the Allard, will Ivan Toney get sold, in the summer still? Because if somebody was going to buy him for 80 million, will they buy him still? And I look at it as looking at one of the more adventurous sides who probably think a little bit more out the box, as is what we did with Rico Henry. Rico Henry was at Walsall, and he had his I remember rightly, his arm was injured, and his arm was injured for a period of time, right? You know what I'm saying? And we still signed him with this injured arm, you know, waiting for him to basically get his injured arm fixed. And we had to wait for, I don't know, 6 or 8 months before that happened, you know what I'm saying? But we still paid the money for him because we felt that he was going to be a good player, and he's been a great player because of, and that probably helped us to get him in as a player. So maybe, you know, we've got this situation here again, but we don't want to think about that. It's all speculation. And like I said to you, I will be talking to the Allard about that a little bit later on this podcast. But don't forget to check out prideofwest.london. There is the emergency podcast that Laney's done with Ali Malali, and also there's the Talksport podcast chat that I did with Darren Bent, you know, and Andy as well. So you could definitely go and check that out right now.
Yeah, there were some really good points I thought you made on the Talksport one, Bill. I mean, you know, I think you were right to talk about how Brentford. Well, you know, you can label this 2 ways. One is protect your asset, but B is to help the player. And you know, Brentford is very much about creating an atmosphere where players can thrive and achieve their potential, and they help them. It's a, you know, it's a real holistic. It's a great atmosphere that they created there. So that redemption and that sort of helping him recover and get through this is going to be pivotal, you know. And I think you were right to say that they will support. They will continue supporting a player that's really let them down. You know, this could impact us, you know, hugely. And you know, there are some people who don't think it's right to talk about, you know, his worth and whether this has affected his worth. But of course, it matters. You know, he's a player that, you know, could go for as high as 75 million, and some people laugh at that, but. His goal scoring record at Brentford is one thing. You put him in Man City's team, and that's not beyond the realms of possibility. You know, if Haaland were to move on or he's injured, I mean, that's probably not going to happen. But a Chelsea or a Liverpool or an Arsenal, you put him in any of those teams, you'll carry on scoring loads of goals, and that's, you know, worth its weight in gold. And if Declan Rice is rumoured to be worth 120 million, then someone who scores loads of goals is going to be loads too. So
that's what I mean. Richarlison, they paid 60 million for. Tottenham did, you know what I'm saying? And he scored how many goals?
He's absolutely not in the same league as Ivan Toney. So yeah, you're right. And I think, you know, the podcast that I did with Ali last night, you know, we looked at it 3 ways. You know, how does the decision leave Brentford Football Club? How does it leave Toney as a player himself? How does it leave us as fans? So, you know, now, you know, this podcast and the ones that are going to follow, it allows us to kind of get a little bit more meat on the bone because we still don't know the reasoning for the length of the ban. They've not given any more details than, you know, the admission of guilt for the number of offences. There's no more detail about, you know, what the offences were. There's still no talk about whether he's got a gambling addiction or there's a problem, an ongoing problem there. It doesn't look like it because they finished in 2021. It's 2 years ago since he last had a flutter. So it doesn't seem to be, it's like an ongoing situation. And, you know, and whether Brentford can appeal themselves or whether the player can appeal, because it punishes both. Yes, I know it's an Iven Toney ban, but Brentford themselves are being punished for his crimes, for want of a better word. And maybe there's still a little bit of leeway there. Maybe we can get the sort of 8 months down to a bit less, because, you know, I still think it still sticks in the craw a lot that we're getting hit for offences that happened when he was at another football club. You know, I know it's the player himself that's being banned, and they'll say it's not the football club itself that's being punished, but it is. You know, you can't. They're inextricably linked. You can't separate the two things. So there's a lot of questions, and whether we can still sell him, or whether we can't, whether that's a football-related matter that he can't get involved in. He can't even sign a contract. I don't know. It's a lot of unanswered questions, Bill.
There are a lot of unanswered questions, which we're going to try and answer some of them later on in the podcast when I spoke to Matt the Allard as well. We'll be talking about the Ivan Toney situation. What else are we talking about on here? We're going to be talking about the last game. Who did we play? West Ham. Played West Ham in the last game as well. We'll be talking to the fans after the match, just talking about that game itself, straight from the stands and in the pubs as well. Also, we got JB giving us some post Ivan Toney banning facts and funk as well. Also, like I said to you, we'd be listening back to bits of the emergency podcast that you did with Ali, and also the TalkSport interview that we did as well. And also we got Ricky from Last Word on Spurs, looking forward to the game at the weekend against Tottenham Hotspur. But listen, we're going to come off the Ivan Toney thing for a little bit. Let's go positive. Let's talk about Sunday, not Saturday. Let's talk about West Ham coming to New Griffin Park. Let's talk about 3 points. Let's talk about 3 million shots going into their goal that we had. Let's talk about a game that we played without Ivan Toney, which we still won. So we're going to go away, we're going to have a little drink, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that West Ham match. So Sunday, and not Saturday, West Ham came to New Griffin Park, and it was too easy, almost. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of people say this result was always on the cards, so what are you getting so excited about? But listen, it's Premier League football. And, you know, it's difficult to get any result. Doesn't really matter what team you're playing. Yes, West Ham, they may have the eyes on one prize, which is European prize, but still, they've got some good players in there. And they actually definitely took them off the bench in the second half to try and see if they can get a result, with Declan Rice and Ben Rama all coming off the bench to try and see if they can get a result. But it was too late by then. Brentford, great game. They had about 3,455 shots on West Ham's goal. We only scored 2 of them, which is probably something that you can have a little bit of a whinge about if you wanted to have a whinge. But really, it was a great game and it was a great result, and it was very, very comfortable, wasn't it, Laney?
Yes. To coin a phrase, it was a lovely little kick around with the lads, wasn't it? It was.
Without the lads, in the case of Ivan Toney's case, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It was a result or a match that never seemed to be in doubt. It was a perfect Sunday afternoon's Brentford entertainment. You know, it was. The sun was out, and there was a good atmosphere, and we scored 2 goals in the first half, and it could have been more. It could have been a load more. It created an insane amount of XG, and if Ivan had been on the pitch, as we heard in the fan clips, it could have been 5, could have been 6. We were a bit wasteful. Mikhail Damsgaard should have had 1, if not 2, and it was easy peasy, and I just think that it was a great way for you to get your 2-0. It finally came in, Bill.
That's right. My 2-0 finally came in. If you don't listen to the podcast regularly, you may not know basically what's happened. We do a score prediction at the end, and I've gone for the law of averages, the Benham law of averages. Our owner, who basically says, like, you know, if something's going to even itself out over a period of time, so just go for it and then stick to your guns. And so I've gone 2-0 for every single podcast this season, and it hasn't come in. It's been an absolute nightmare. And then the one podcast that did come in was the Chelsea game, and we didn't do a podcast then, so it didn't count. But I still went for it, and finally my 2-0's come in, like, you know, almost like the last game of the season. Almost, it's finally come in, so I'm very happy. But what's more happy about is all these people that I've never really seen before just came up to me after the game, goes, "Well, your 2-0 came in. That's great." So, like I said to you, thanks very much for listening to the pod. You obviously listen without nodding off as well, because you actually know what's going on. So, thanks for the acknowledgement there. Thanks for all the people that have been coming up and saying that you listen to the podcast and love it, which is really great. So, which is all good. Just giving you all a shout out. But yes, very, very happy that we got the 2-0. And talking about the fans after the game, Laley, let's go and have a little listen to what the fans had to say immediately after that West Ham game, because the sun was shining and they were very, very happy.
Exactly the same as last year's 2-0 win here. They replayed the European game before and after. They've got the same this season. We put the same performance out, very professional, made loads and loads of chances. I think if Toney was on that pitch, that could have been 5.
Yeah, that was very straightforward today, really, wasn't it? Good chance for some of the players finding their form in a B shirt to have space on the ball. West Ham's press was appalling, really, and we just played through it. Some great performances out there, actually. Thought Hickey played well, showed that there's life beyond Ivan as well for us. So, come on, you beasts.
We own them.
We own them.
And we own their stadium anyway, obviously. But we own them as well.
We do, as the taxpayer. We own their stadium, yeah.
Brian was amazing again today. He worked so hard. Good touches from Wisa. Charlton's still got to find his feet. But different. Probably played a bit more football, a little bit on the ground. Some lovely interplay. Damsgaard links up quite nicely. That was great. I thought Rico was amazing as well today.
Every time Ivan Toney's not played for us, we still score goals. We still won games. So it's not the end of the road when he does eventually go. There's always going to be another striker.
We were always going to finish top 10. Results would have to go a bit peculiar for us not to do that. I think this must have assured that, I would have thought. And I think, we just did what we had to do today. It was like, it was a bit of a walk in the park. We created loads. We could have scored. We could have been 3 or 4 up before they even looked interested in the game, and that kind of happened. With sort of 25 minutes to go when they brought on, Declan Rice and Ben Rama. But it was interesting without Toney today as well, just sort of having to rejig it a bit out front. I think it kind of worked a bit. Not sure Sharda's favourite position is out on the left. He seems to have his better games, either through the middle or on the right, definitely on the right. But yeah, I thought it was a very enjoyable afternoon.
Made it look relatively easy in the first half, made hard work of it in the second half. But I suppose when you are the bogey team, you get these things in your favour. 2 tricky games to come. You never know where you're going to get at Tottenham, but hopefully we get a point or so there. Last game of the season, not so sure, but apparently Wisa's still on fire.
There you go, fans, straight after the West Ham game. And like I said, it was a weird one because, again, talking about no jeopardy, I mean, this is my whole thing, call me Jeopardy B, what I'm saying? Not Deputy Dog, but Jeopardy B. There's no jeopardy at the moment now for the Bees, and especially when you play games like that where it's lovely. It seems not very easy, and if you compare that to the Sunderland situation in the playoffs, when we were talking about the playoffs beforehand, which is full of jeopardy, Sunderland fans must have been like, booking their hotels and their train tickets down to Wembley after their first leg of their playoff. And then all of a sudden there's all sorts of tears, like, what I'm saying, a few days later as they completely and utterly fluffed down. And Middlesbrough as well, with the Marcus Force posse as well. They're thinking, we're right in there, we've only got the Coventry, to play. And all of a sudden they fluffed it as well because there's jeopardy, but there's no jeopardy for us. West Ham come down. We've beaten them 3 times in the league already. Again, it was just a walk in the park for us, and it was one of those really weird games where at no stage of that game did I feel any fear or nervousness at all, which is nice for football, but sometimes you want a little bit of a pang, don't you, Laney?
You seem to be a bit kind of, I don't know, you probably need to go and have a second team that's like crap, because
I watched Salish heavily.
You seem to yearn for days that are kind of just like, we've been through it. Just enjoy it, mate. You can't have a playoff game every week. We had games that were just walks in the park, even when we were in the Championship playing well. It's just it was all about getting to this prize. The prize we have now, we need to get better. There's a good chance that we can improve and move up and start pushing for top 6. That's the next challenge. It's not reliving days that we've already done, but you're right. It was like, to do the double over West Ham is still an impressive feat. I know we played them at 2 periods in the season almost identical, where they were involved or kind of like distracted by European matches. It was the same with the victory at our place last year. They were looking at Europa semi-final in that case, and now it's getting through to a final against AZ Alkmaar tonight. So you can fully understand why they had their eye off the ball, but you still can't. It was such a comprehensive victory. We didn't just kind of splutter past them when they weren't trying. We just literally passed them off the pitch, and that's the other thing that being without Iven Toney allows, is for us to have a different style of play. We talked last week, didn't we, about whether the style of play and knocking it long up to Ivan was kind of affecting our, in brackets, enjoyment levels. And now, there was no long ball really. There was a couple of long throws, and we scored from one of them. But it does change the way we set up, and we're going to see a lot more football, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, Ivan Toney missing. So, like I said, changed the formation, 4-3-3. We set up front, which is interesting. Shada on the wing and Boomer on the wing, who was on fire, we have to say. And like I said to you, it goes to show you that Brentford, we play to our strengths, which is, everyone says, but that's not rocket science. But the thing is, if you look at other teams, they don't necessarily do that. You get managers coming in, trying to get them to play a style of football, which they can't play because they haven't got the players to play it. And the fact is that I think we look at the players that we've got and we either look at the opposition and we play a particular type of football to match that opposition, or we go the other way round and we say, well, these are the type of players that we have. These are our strengths. Actually, let's just play to that, and it just goes to show you then, obviously, Ivan Toney comes out. So we've got different types of strengths and we played a different type of game, and it actually really worked. Just coming down to, we're talking about chances and opportunities, and we create only a particular amount of chances during the games. I mean, when it comes to XG, Brentford, interestingly, are roughly around about the kind of same level. The XG they've created and the amount of goals they've scored is roughly about the sort of kind of spot on at the moment now, which is interesting. But when it comes to this particular game, ironically, the game that Ivan Toney has been out, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the shot chart, and it looks like, like when you've maybe had a bit of drunk and you've and your eyes, and there's all sorts of bubbles in front of your eyes. I'm saying this is what the shot chart looks like to me. There are so many bubbles and massive bubbles. I'm looking at, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm just trying to count them up. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 16 or 17 or 18 bubbles inside the Brentford sort of 18-yard box, and about 7 or 8 of them are in the 6-yard box. You've got massive chances, Damsgaard's 47% chance in 7 minutes, Damsgaard 55% chance in 62 minutes. That's 55%, say 1 in 2 should have gone in. Got Ben Mee on 57% on 40 minutes as well, It's just absolutely huge. Johan Wieser is 1 in 2 chance when he scored his goal, 52% as well. And ironically, Brian Mbeumo, whose goal was from the edge of the area on 20 minutes, that was actually one of the smaller chances that we had, which is about 22%, which basically 1 in 5 of those goes in the net. But that was still 22%. And other than that, we even had sort of smaller and bigger chances. So it's amazing. A lot of people say, West Ham were on the beach, they weren't interested, but they're still a good side. And how many times have we played sort of kind of sides who are not meant to be so good, but we haven't been able to grind them down and create the opportunity? So the fact that we were able to, you can only play who's in front of you, and that's exactly what we did, Laney, man. I'm not being funny. I'm looking at the West Ham. The XG is 4.15 to Brentford to 0.23. I mean, I think we got 0.22 in a game a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember exactly who we played, which is one of the sort of, we said, one of the lowest XGs I think that we've had in the whole of the Premier League. That's what basically West Ham got, and I'm looking, and I don't think they had a shot within the 18-yard box. They might have just about had one, which is here. Johnson on 65 minutes, 4%, so 4 in 100 of those normally go in. But other than that, basically they created nothing really whatsoever. So you've got to give us a little bit of credit for that as well. I mean, lady, in a way, I'm not saying that this is the answer, but it's also quite encouraging for a post-Toney era, Ivan Toney era, to sort of kind of realise that we can actually, we're not shackled by the fact that we need one player to play one particular way, innit?
Yeah, 100%. When Ivan Toney isn't Brentford Football Club, where there is life after him. There was always going to be life after him. He's an exceptional player. He's done brilliant for us, and he'll do brilliantly elsewhere. So yeah, it's probably really good for us. It's probably that is the biggest silver lining, if there is one, is that we're forced to sort of find a solution to coping without an exceptional player, and also have him coming back in the new year. So it's you have to look for a positive. There's no point in us sort of like walking around or moping around, saying feeling like the world's come to an end. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but life does go on, and life will go on, and we've had a long time to work out what we're going to do. So the DOFs and the coaches and the statisticians and the strategists, they will have worked out how we're going to cope, and then we've got a transfer window that's about to open in 2 games' time. So we've got a lot to look forward to, and we've got a big game on Saturday at Spurs to look forward to. So we go to White Hart Lane or Spurs Stadium or whatever they call it, a huge karaoke stadium.
Right.
And
you know what songs you got lined up for the karaoke on Saturday, Laney, yet?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a Mantronics, isn't it?
Of course.
100%, yeah.
That's right. I'm going to go for the hot...
Dum.
I'm going to go for the hot stepper, mate. I'm going to go for the hot stepper, maybe. You know,
In fact...
Or broader than Broadway, maybe?
Yeah, my Mantronics era is before that, actually, that track. Mine's like, 3 or 4 years before. Anyway, but we go to Spurs on Saturday, and we go there to win, I think.
That's right. Okay, and just going back to that West Ham game, what the match summary really? Okay, for Brentford, we created a high number of chances relative to our possession and stole the ball often from West Ham. We were effective at creating goal scoring opportunities from set pieces. As for the strength of West Ham, they had no significant strengths. For us, we were poor at finishing and we were caught offside often, and they were also poor at finishing and caught offside often as well. We attacked through the middle, had a high shot frequency when in possession, which I like that, which is good. Basically, we just shoot. And they attacked down our left side. I mean, talking about the top players, I mean, Brian Mbeumo, who was right up there in the Who Scored charts with 8.8. Absolutely great game he is. And Wisa with an 8, Ben Mee 7.6, Ethan Pinnock 7.6, and David Raya 7.4. So all the top players were all Bs. You know, total shots as well. Brian Mbeumo right up there with 6. You know, maybe should have scored a few more. Johan Wisa with 5, Mikkel Damsgaard with 4. Like to see Damsgaard shooting though, which is good. You know, see a few of them come off, it'll be all good. Ben Mee with 3. I mean, you've got a central defender with 3 shots on as well. Kevin Schade with 2 again. So all the top shooters were Bs as well, and tackles. We had Damsgaard with 7, right? Great game. And then you had Jan Elt. Then you had Brian Mbeumo and Frank Nyeka. And right in the middle of them lot was Danny Ings as well, who had 3 tackles, but all the rest of them in and around that. So, you know, it was all Brentford. 24 attempts by us, 4 attempts by West Ham, 13 from open play for us and 4 for them. You know, it's like, you know, honestly, it just goes on and on just to kind of see the dominance that we had in that game. Interestingly, the passing was similar, 500 passes to 445-ish, you know what I'm saying? So it's almost like, you know, what we're doing on there, but we were being more effective with our passes as well. And so to you, 9 on target shots, 4 on target for them as well. We had 9 off target as well. That's why they had none. I mean, it was just ridiculous. 6 block shots as well. They had none. I mean, literally, West Ham were just I don't know what was going on there. You know what I'm saying? But they could have probably put on a little bit of a better show. But listen, I mean, that West Ham game. Just final thoughts on that West Ham game, because listen, I know what you're saying, Laney, but you know, I don't want to disregard it, because I think it's a disrespect to Brentford. It's disrespect to what we've done. And I think for everyone that just keeps saying, they were rubbish and, you know, they had minds on other things, I think that's too simple to put that into the mixer, because also there's an argument to say that when you're playing big matches, you want to kind of come off them with a little bit of momentum and a little bit of a vibe, because that will help you with those matches. So any just last thoughts on that West Ham game, Laney?
I thought it was really professional. I thought it was an opportunity to you know, shuffle the pack and shuffle the formation, as I said before. And it was good to see that, you know, we sprayed the ball around. We played some lovely football. It was just a really entertaining, positive performance. You know, and I think, as I said, you know, a minute ago, it sets us up perfectly for the trip to Tottenham on Saturday.
And it does. I mean, and we again, just Schade, we talked about the different forward line. I mean, obviously, like I said, Mbeumo had a great game. You know, Schade had a good game. Wisa had a great game as well. Damsgaard, I've just got to briefly mention him, because he's a player who's had a few question marks flying around about him. People always ask us about him. What do you think of Damsgaard? Do you think he's stepped up? Do you think he's going to fit into the frame? Do you think that this game kind of showed him in a light which we're thinking this is really positive?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not, the jury's out. I just don't see. I don't think we've seen him anywhere near his best. He still looks, you know, he still looks too light for me. He looks ill, but you know, I think we'll see him back next season stronger. I think his finishing was poor on Saturday. I'm not going to overly criticise him, because he did have a really good game, but I just think I think we're still trying to force him into that team a little, and we need to work out a kind of He needs a run of performances, and I think the next 2 games allows him to do that. So yeah, I think jury's out a little still, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him next season for sure.
Ian Jury is out on the damn scar. But listen, let's take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back, actually, and then what we're going to do is we're going to hear from someone who doesn't put any juries out on anybody. We've got JB, and he's saying that the jury is out on how the Bees have done or are going to do after the Ivan Toney situation. Let's hear what JB has to say with his facts and his funk.
Hello, Jonathan Birchall here again. As we completed the double over West Ham for a second successive season, and as if as a prelude to forthcoming events, Iven Toney missed his 3rd Premier League game of the season. But as for the other 2, Forest away and Liverpool at home, Brian Mbeumo and Yohan Wissa both scored in the game. We now know that as it stands, Ivan will miss the first half of next season, with the longest suspension in our history. That dubious honour was held by Terry Evans, who missed 2 months and 14 games at the start of the 85-86 season, as a result of a poor disciplinary record in the preceding season at his previous club, non-league Hillingdon. Evans went on to be a true legend of the club, and was the last player to win the Supporters Player of the Year award twice, back in 1990, following in the footsteps of double winners Chick Brodie, Bobby Ross, Peter Gelson and Andy Sinton. Potentially, Ivan Toney could be added to that list next week, having previously won it in our promotion season. Our second season in the Premier League will see us finish in the top half of the table. That's something we've achieved in our respective league in 14 of the last 15 seasons, since we left the 4th tier as champions in 2009. Last year's 13th place was the exception. In 1935-36 we finished in 5th place in the top tier. The following 2 seasons we were in 6th. No matter what happens in our last 2 games, we will finish in at least the 4th highest league position in our entire history.
So there you go, JB, facts and funk, post Toney banning. JB always finds a little angle for everything, which makes me feel quite good. So talking about Ivan Toney and banning and a little angle, we've got an angle called the Allard, and because he's been angling, he's been fishing for information. Do you like that little link? Actually, I've worked hard on that one, and the Allard and myself are going to sit down and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Ivan Toney situation. But like I said to you, don't forget to check out prideofwest.london. There's 2 podcasts up, the emergency podcast, Laney and Ali talking Ivan Toney, and also me on TalkSport talking about the Ivan Toney scenario. We'll come back with the Allard and we'll talk about Ivan and the ban.
I'm incredibly disappointed and incredibly let down, because he's not just let himself down, he's let the club down, he's let the fans down. We're just almost unlucky from the point of view that he was playing for us when he got caught. But he's let the whole club down, he's let the fan base down. But that said, as I've said, people do make mistakes, and I think that we also have to back him when he comes back, assuming he does come back to play for us and he doesn't get sold in that January transfer window. Because what else can we do at this point? We can't just throw him on the scrap heap. I think most normal people, decent people believe in rehabilitation and believe that if you make a mistake, that's it. You're not just thrown on the scrap heap. I mean, God Almighty, every footballer who ever made a mistake was thrown on the scrap heap. There are footballers who have done far worse things. Yeah, I 100% feel let down, disappointed, quite angry, really, that it's happened. But I think we also have to move on from that, and we have to back the players who will be playing for us until January, 100%, get right behind them, which of course we will. And, we've been in this situation before when players that not so much us, but maybe other people felt were indispensable have moved on. You know, life after Scott Hogan, life after Neil Maupay, life after Ollie Watkins, life after Saeed Benrahma. Let's not forget we were guaranteed to go down without Christian Eriksen. So, you know, I think we'll be fine. I don't think there's any need to panic.
Listen, this ban for 8 months runs up to and including the 16th of Jan next year. Do you think with that in mind it makes it less likely, more likely, or makes no difference to his future at your club?
I think it makes absolutely no difference to his future at the club. Well, in a way, I think also the fear that we had is that as fans, we don't want our players to leave. We don't want no one to leave. But from an economic sense, obviously Brentford are a team that when a player gets to a certain value, they'll move on. And we know that. And we've learned that over the years, and we've learned to get used to it. So we're already bracing. I mean, we know David Raya's going to go soon. We know Ivan Toney's going to go fairly soon. So for me, the concern was Iven Toney's going to go this summer. We'll have to gear ourselves up, but at least we know that he's going to be there at least until next January. So I think that's going to be the case. But also the other thing that we're talking about is that if he's out for 8 months, and this is something that he has done himself, technically, we would love to think that Brentford would be able to negotiate at least another year extension on his contract, because his contract's up for renewal in 18 months' time. And I think that's important for him to give something back to us and back to the club who has backed him through this whole process.
There you have 2 podcast clips which are live now on prideofwest.london. You can check out the whole interviews on there right now. That was the emergency podcast that Laney did with Ali Malali from Her Game 2 about the Iven Toney ban, and also an interview that I did on a TalkSport Live yesterday with Darren Bent and also Andy Goldstein talking about the Iven Toney ban. Check them out now on prideofwest.london. So we've got the Allard in the house, in the place. The Allard, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, very good. Just absorbing the news.
Tell you something, and there's been a lot to absorb as well. Iven Toney, obviously, he's not going to be playing for Brentford for quite a while. And if anything, like I said, this has been a positive in the fact that as Brentford fans and as Brentford owners and as his players and, you know, Thomas Frank, they've had a lot of time to prepare for this. So they've obviously been doing things in training in and around the club to prepare for the fact that Iven Toney is not going to be there for a while. And obviously they may not have predicted the fact that he's going to be out for 8 months, but still they knew he was going to be there for a while. So we knew this was coming. So I'm just wondering, how do you think we will compensate for the fact that Iven Toney is not part of the Brentford fabric for a fair few months?
Yeah, I think that if we just, firstly on the timing, I think it couldn't have worked out much better, because what isn't going to happen is we're not going to be in an almighty scrap for a position in the league, which could be Europe or maybe at the other end, and not have Toney available, i.e. at the end of this season or at the end of next season. So I think that's a big sort of bonus, really, that this didn't happen maybe sort of 7 or 8 games ago. Albeit that I suppose you could already argue that we were out of the European places, but more about next season in a way, that at least it's he comes back in January. Or mid-January, assuming he's still at the club then. I think my assumption is he will be. In terms of compensation, I kind of think that the way Brentford are set up is that we have, you know, Toney's our number 9, and then we have 3 sort of wingers, all of whom can also play as a number 9, if that makes sense. So, you know, you've got Mbumo and Wissa, obviously historically have been at the club for almost a couple of years now, Wissa and Mbumo much longer. And then you've also got Sharda, who's come in more recently, but has looked like, you know, he's pretty much up to speed. And all 3 of those can play as a number 9, but they can also play in the wide positions. So I think the balance of the squad's really nice at the moment, because if you start with 3 of them, there's always one to come off the bench and that sort of thing. Taking Toney out of it, I think, makes life quite difficult, because it's almost like you definitely need somebody else that can play as number 9 to come in. Whether it's another one of these sort of winger number 9 combinations like Watkins was, or whether it's a straight number 9 like Maupay was, like Toney is, I think they've got to decide that. They may, I would think, maybe they go winger / number 9 again, because if Toney does go back, I don't know if you want somebody who's just sitting around. Do you know what I mean? I think it all depends what their vision is for Toney moving forwards.
Yeah, and obviously we go with their vision for Toney, whether or not he's coming, staying, whether or not he's going to go in the January window, and whether or not somebody buys him in this window, whether or not he talks about signing another year's extension, which is something that we spoke about. I spoke about, like I said to you, on the TalkSport podcast. Check it out, Pride of West .London. Ali Mullally spoke about it as well on the Emergency podcast. Whether or not he gives us another year, which should enable us to try and kind of to keep his value as such and recoup, if we're going to recoup anything back from him. Interesting that you were talking about about the timing, the Allard. I mean, there's some people that are complaining about the timing, saying it's the final 2 games of the season, and if anything, if he was going to get banned, he should have got banned maybe the day after the end of the season. So say, for example, Arsenal fans are moaning the fact that, if, and even though they probably don't believe it, the game goes down to the last game of the season, as in for the Championship, okay, between Man City and them, and we play Man City, the final game of the season, without Ivan Toney, this actually affects them. Do you think that's a fair point?
Yes, I don't think that's going to happen, but it is a fair point. But I think for us as a football club, the timing is pretty good. I also think it's hard to justify a ban that starts the day after the end of the season if no one's playing football for 2.5 months or whatever, or competitive football. So I think it's, again, for Brentford, being selfish, yes, I quite like this, because otherwise there could have been an argument. Everyone would be saying, well, hang on, why are we banning him from the beginning of June when there's no football or whatever date that is that the Premier League finishes at end of May, and he's not going to be playing football until August. Surely that doesn't. So in a way, I think it's I don't know who's timed it and how they've timed it, but it feels like it's to our benefit. And I do get that argument from the Arsenal supporters, but it ain't going down to the last day of the season.
Yeah, okay. And look, talking about playing style, I mean, Brentford are known to switch their style of play and also their formation depending on the opposition and what they've got going on. We saw, interestingly, on Sunday when they played West Ham, they went 4-3-3, and obviously Ivan Toney wasn't there, but we put Wieser up front with, with the 2 wingers either side of him. And for us at that game, okay, let's forget about West Ham, whether or not they were good or bad or whatever. You can only play what's put in front of you. It worked out very well for us. We created an enormous amount of high quality chances in front of goal, 4.5 XG, and we had a ridiculous amount of shots on goal. And there's an argument to say that we should have won by more. Now, is this kind of an indication of how we can go without Ivan Toney? And also, just very similar to back in the day when we had Scott Hogan, when we used to play play one particular way for Scott Hogan, and then when Scott Hogan left and wasn't within the team, it almost like kind of freed the players up to play, and everyone became part of the team. And do you think this may be another example of the fact that if Ivan isn't there, it just goes to show you the flexibility of Brentford?
Yeah, to some extent. I think there's 2 things for Saturday for the Saturday game against West Ham. I think that we adjusted our style for 2 reasons. Number one, West Ham are one of them teams that don't really want the ball, it seems, because when they get it, they don't look after it. So I think there's an adjustment that you can say against West Ham. You can expect maybe to have the ball more than you would against, say, obviously a Man City, but say against Brighton. Brighton maybe is a better example. So against West Ham, I would have thought we adjusted for that, and then we also adjusted for the fact we didn't have Toney. Toney's your out ball, isn't he? He's the ball that when you're under pressure, you can go long to Toney. When you don't have that option, you have to look after the ball a bit more, which means automatically you're probably going to, in terms of your possession stats, it's going to go up. So I think 2 things for Saturday. I think if you don't have an Ivan Toney, I'm not sure you want to be pumping it down the pitch as much as we do at the moment. So, I would expect our possession stats to potentially go up a bit, but I also think that puts us under more danger of being turned over in dangerous positions, if that makes sense, because I just think we'd be a little bit wary. I didn't see Wieser winning many, of the few balls that were punted in his direction, and there were less. I didn't really see him winning many of those. One of our big things is hit it long, and then Toney wins the header, and then we play beyond that, or Toney holds it up and gives us time to get up the pitch. I don't think we have a player in the team that has those characteristics. Once Toney's on this ban, now that Toney's on this ban, shall we say? So yeah, stylistically, we probably will have to change a bit. Yeah.
Right, and looking towards the future, I mean, forgetting the fact that Ivan Toney is going to leave at some stage, we've obviously got a short-term aim now because we're going to get to the end of the season. We'll have the summer, unfortunately, for the posse that are flying out to America, and for the Americans out there, you're not going to see Ivan Toney in America because he's been banned from football. He can't start training again until the middle of September, and then he's banned until the middle of January. Okay, now obviously between August and the middle of January, we need to have a plan, because obviously we've seen what happens if you have a terrible start to the season. It makes your life very, very difficult. So you can imagine that Brentford have been planning this from time. Obviously bringing Sharda in is one thing they've been planning to do, but do you think they may have anything else up their sleeve with regards recruitment for between August and September, or maybe even for the long term? I know you talked about bringing a winger stroke striker in, possibly, but they need to do something. And if you were Thomas Frank, what would you do?
I would be looking. I'd probably look. I reckon I'd look for two players. I think I would want a number 9. I think I would want somebody that is an out-ball option, because I think there are plenty of games in the Premier League where you're not going to have the ball, most of the time. There's a lot of very, very good teams in the Premier League. I might have a slightly different view if we were playing in the Championship. In the Premier League, I think we probably do need a number 9, and then we need potentially another. I always thought we did another 9/winger. I think if you look at the 3 players I mentioned, you could put KLP in there as well,
which is Keane Lewis Potter.
Have those, Keane Lewis Potter. Sorry, but he doesn't quite have those attributes that the other 3 have. I don't think he's quite got that pace. But he's a player that I would have thought when we signed him we were looking at playing him in a front 3. I'm not sure that we're so convinced about that now. But he's got a pre-season to go through, and when he comes back from his injury, so let's see where he is as well. But we're going to need 1 or 2 faces. How we do that, I don't know. Do we go into the loan market? Do you find good number 9s in the loan market? Probably not. Number 9s, they're really hard to come by. There aren't that many around. You think, how many are there out there? It's quite a difficult position. We sort of played at times when Watkins was our number 9. He's not an out number 9. He could play out wide as well. So and we've never really had more than 1 at the club, albeit Force was around for a few years. So they're not easy to find. So they've definitely got some thinking to do. And then if they are going to buy somebody, they've got to sell it to them who's a number 9. They've got to sell it to them that when Toney comes back, they're still potentially going to be able to play for the team or play a part.
Yeah, okay.
They're not just you know what I mean? They're not just a stopgap. It's almost like you want to look for a young player, but ideally you'd want that young player not to have to be thrown into the Lions' Den. You'd want him to sort of, come in whilst Toney was still there for a season, and then get up to speed, and then when Toney goes, you've got that player. So I think there's a conundrum about how much experience and how young they'd want that player to be.
It sounds to me, to be got to the Allard, and I think about this, is that it sounds to me that they're going to be spending the summer converting Sharda to a number 9, and then bringing somebody in maybe on the left hand side over there, sort of bringing somebody in on the wings, which probably makes a little bit more sense, because the way that Brentford operate, again, not throwing anyone to the Lions and also trying to get somebody in of value is going to be very difficult. And Sharda has always been a person that they thought, bring him in as a winger, convert him into a striker, and maybe the job is going to happen a lot quicker than before. Just finally, talking about Ivan Toney and not being with us anymore. Ivan Toney, obviously, there's thoughts about him, there's talk about him going and leaving Brentford in the summer even, and then this ban has come, and some people think, he's not going to leave now, but some people think that there's some clubs even thinking of paying something for him. Talksport were talking about that fact that Chelsea are still prepared to pay 80 million for Ivan Toney even now, which is an interesting thought. I mean, with Chelsea you wouldn't put anything past them. The only fact is that obviously Ivan Toney, I'm saying, when you have to do the identity check when he comes in at the stadium, at the training stadium, with the other 4,752 players that they've signed anyway, but that'll be interesting. But Ivan Toney's value, do you think that this ban, if Brentford were looking in to cash in on him very soon, recently, do you think that this ban will have anything to do detrimental with his value?
Yes, I'll quickly, before I answer that, I'm going to quickly agree with you on Sharda. I think he's the one of the 3 that has most of those attributes, and maybe I don't know if he'll be ready next season, but he's the one most likely to play as a number 9. Anyway, answering this question, I can't see how it hasn't affected his value, to be honest, because if you're buying Ivan Toney and he can't play for you for, I don't know, however long it is, he can't train with you till end of September, play with you till middle of January, are you going to be wanting to pay a player big dollars for that period, or big money? I would think that clubs would. I just feel like if there is a market out there for Toney, I feel like there'll be some players will have withdrawn from that, and that will affect his value. That's kind of my feeling. If we could get top dollar for him, you know what it's like. The club will have a price on Toney's head, and if somebody comes in and wants to pay that in the summer, then he'll go. But my gut feel is that the market will have depreciated a little bit. So the chances of us, it's a question of whether we're prepared to take less money, I think, for him to go in the summer. I'm not sure. I don't really see it happening, and then I don't really see it happening in the January transfer window either. I think the crunch is probably next summer, and like Ali said, and like I think you said, and I'm sure Laney agreed as well, the extra year on the contract would be quite a nice thing.
It would be definitely a good thing. So listen, the Allard, it's been good chatting to you. Have a little bit of a catch up. No doubt we're going to be drinking very early in the Tottenham region on Saturday morning, so I shall see you there.
if you can find anywhere.
Yeah, I found somewhere, mate. Don't you worry about it, mate. Secret squirrel, as they say.
Yeah. I will see you for sure on Saturday at some point. It's going to be a long old day, and I've got a 50th birthday party to go to afterwards.
Excellent. Okay, well, celebrations to you and all your posse. So there, more words on the Toney, me and the Allard.
Yeah, well, the Allard speaks more sense than the Allard Ice, which he's the one that's the current manager of the relegation-threatened Yorkshire team.
Is he still manager of Leeds? Do you know?
I think he might have a couple more games. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully he'll be as unsuccessful as he's been so to date. Yeah.
We shall see, we shall see, as we say. And it's quite nice to have a Saturday afternoon off, which we can sort of sit down and digest all this stuff. I think we'll be looking for a boozer in Tottenham after the game where we can just sit down and maybe watch a little bit of, I don't know if there's going to be any sort of kind of football that we can watch after the game, but that should be quite interesting. I think they're playing on the Sunday. They are, them lot. There's Yorkshire lot, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, which should be quite interesting. But Tottenham, we are playing on Saturday morning, very early. We're sitting down there what you're always trying to do is trying to find somewhere where you can have a little get together, a few little snifters before the game. And it's quite difficult in the Tottenham area because, quite frankly, there aren't very many places that are open very early in Tottenham on Saturday morning. But it seems like as we put the word out on our little WhatsApp ring, there's a few places and a few people that seem to be assembling in various zones all around in the central and north London area a lot earlier than about 10 o'clock in the morning, so we might be having some of that, which is all good. But lady, Tottenham, we're talking about the karaoke zone. We're going to that big old karaoke hall in North London. You're looking forward to this one, aren't you?
I am. I don't like going to Tottenham. It's always a difficult stadium to get to. It's just a ball ache. Let's be honest with you. I think we stand a really good chance this time. They've had a really underwhelming season, although they're still in a decent position. I think there's lots to prove. It was another one of those away games that we just didn't turn up at last season. I remember watching the game playing out in front of me, going, we're just not in it. They can score as many as they want today if they want, but they didn't really sort of crank it up either. So it was just an easy victory. I guess it was as easy for them at their place last year as it was for us on Sunday against West Ham. It was kind of one of them, they didn't really have to do a lot to win, and I just want us to go there and turn up and do ourselves justice like we did at the Emirates this season compared to last season. We need to do that, and there's still a good chance we could overtake them, isn't there?
Yeah, I'll tell you something. There is all my Tottenham mates that I know, like literally every single one of them, I don't know any one of them who's actually looking forward to this game. I mean, they might be looking forward to a little bit more that Ivan Toney's now banned, but none of them have been looking forward to this game because they are properly in the doldrums about their team, about everything that's going on in and around their team, and they're quite nervous of a Brentford coming to play them. And I haven't heard their views since Ivan Toney's ban. Like I said to you, we're going to get Ricky on in a minute, and he's going to give you his thoughts and his vibes on the whole situation. But for me, these Tottenham fans are not really looking forward to us coming, which means that for me, it's almost like, again, we do a reverse no jeopardy. There is no jeopardy for us. It doesn't really matter. We can just go there and just do whatever. There's no pressure whatsoever on us. Even though we were kind of out of the, we were out of trouble last season, but I still felt there was a little bit of pressure for us to kind of try and deliver, and we just didn't really deliver last season. Whereas now, honestly, people are saying to me, what do you reckon? I'm like, I don't really care. Just like, let's go there and have a bit of a laugh. Let's see if we can go find somewhere to drink early and then, get down the match and see what happens. And then we hang out in the afternoon. And it is one of those situations for Brentford. We've got no pressure on our shoulders whatsoever. And I think almost like the fact that Ivan Toney is out of the game, we've got even less pressure because people are going to be expecting you even less to get a result.
Yeah, it's a game that, we're going to get loads of grief, aren't we, from the Spurs fans? They're going to be practicing their Ivan Toney, insults to us, and it's a game we just need to get out of our system. And I just think we, as I said before, we just need to go there and do ourselves justice. And I think there's at least a point to be had there. We're 4 points behind them in the league. I've just looked. Although I want them to win their last game, so I'm quite happy for them probably to finish above us.
And their last game obviously is against Leeds United, so so give us the points in this one and they can win that Leeds game and then we'll all be happy with that.
Yes.
But that's enough about us trying to second guess the opposition. We need to get to someone who knows exactly what's going down in Spurs. We've got to go to Ricky from Last Word on Spurs podcast, and he's going to give us the lowdown on Tottenham Hotspur.
Hey guys, Ricky Sachs here from The Last Word on Spurs. Hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you ever so much for having me back on as we look ahead, of course, to Tottenham versus Brentford, Spurs' final Premier League home game of the season in what's been a difficult season, which many Spurs fans like me can't wait for it to come to an end. It's been a season in which has seen Spurs have 3 different people in charge of the football club, which ultimately tells you the utter chaos and mess behind the scenes of Tottenham. Of course, we started the season with Antonio Conte, who it looked very, very bright. Spurs started the season well, of course. They were in that top 4, looking like at one point they may even challenge for the Premier League. And then slowly as we got towards the World Cup break, everything started to, I would say, crumble to some degree. Spurs having a number of injuries, the loss of Rodrigo Bentancur as well. In addition to that, of course, the breakdown in contracts for Antonio Conte. It meant really that it was irretrievable to find a way forward, especially after Conte's press conference after the draw against Southampton, where Spurs were leading by 3-1 and drew it 3-3, that it was almost irretrievable, though he torched his relationship with the players and also with the board. Spurs, of course, made the change and actually selected Conte's assistant to take the job, which sounds, as I speak, absolutely insane. But yes, Spurs actually did that, and they employed Christian Stellini, who very quickly lost the dressing room even further than Antonio Conte, and that has now led to Ryan Mason being in charge for the remainder of this season. Ryan's a good guy, he's a Spurs guy, he's done the best job he can under difficult circumstances, but ultimately Spurs are now in the midst of both a managerial search and a director of football. The manager search has actually seen us linked with, as you know, your very own Thomas Frank, Brentford manager. So we've also actually seen a link towards your technical director as well, which will be interesting to see how far that goes. But in relation to Thomas Frank, I've always been a big fan of him, to be honest with you. I'm not just saying that to wind you Brentford fans up. I like the way he is with the media. He plays a good brand of football. He seems like a decent manager, gets the best out of players, not egotistical, very much down to earth. And if I'm being honest with you, he would definitely be on the shortlist for me in terms of who I want as Spurs manager. And I know personally he is on that shortlist. I don't know how far he is up the list, but most certainly he's of consideration. I'm sure the fact that Spurs would have to pay some form of compensation will mean he's not near the very, very top, because Spurs ultimately, as we've seen under this current ownership, will try and go for an option which ticks a lot of the boxes. and one being compensation is something they'll try and avoid for sure. So we shall see how it plays out for Thomas Frank. But I don't want to ruffle you guys too much. Great manager, really like the brand of football. And, I mean, of course, we had that game earlier in the season where Brentford were leading the game by 2-0 and Spurs came back to 2-2. I've got to be honest with you and say that although Spurs made the comeback, was really underwhelmed, to be honest with you. You know, there's a lot of talk about how Spurs are going to be ready after the international break we had and how they'd be firing on all cylinders after the World Cup. And we just didn't simply see that. And obviously that led to Antonio Conte losing that dressing room to some degree and the real breakdown in communications behind the scenes. Harry Kane, of course, look, he's the superstar in this Tottenham team. It's unbelievable to think that he's 8 goals off Erling Haaland, despite, you know, the utter mess that surrounds him in terms of the way the team has played this season. But that's an absolute credit to Harry Kane. Of course, a lot of Spurs fans, including me, will want to see him stay at the club, sign a new contract. I think we have to be real and say, look, for what Harry's given to the club in terms of service, and of course now the Premier League on second now in terms of top goal scorer. Harry owes it to himself to look at his career with a year to go on that contract and feel, can he win trophies elsewhere, or does he ultimately want to be a one-club man? Daniel Levy has spoken about the fact that, you know, for Harry, it means a lot more being a legend than arguably maybe going to win trophies. But we shall see. There's so much still to play out with the Harry Kane story. Obviously, United, Manchester United, one of the clubs that are reportedly keen, as potentially are Chelsea with Maurizio Pochettino going in there. And don't get me started about Maurizio going there and how I feel about that. Just utter heartbreak at the moment in an hour in Tottenham to even make that possible and not even have any communication to Maurizio in terms of being a managerial target. But turning our eyes to Brentford at the weekend, Spurs' form going into this one, definitely shady. They've come off the back of a defeat to Aston Villa where in parts they were comprehensively outplayed by Villa. And Spurs find themselves now, of course, with the option of European football being probably Conference League or no European football. Now, for me as a Spurs fan, I want to see Spurs in Europe. It is something we've become accustomed to, and not mean to sound arrogant that Spurs are always in some form of European football. But I know many fans feel the Conference League is below Tottenham. Harry Kane spoke about recently the fact that if you're a club that hasn't won a trophy for 15 years, can you really argue that a trophy like that is still even beyond you? You know, of course, we've seen Jose Mourinho go and win it as well. And ultimately, the level Spurs are right now, they're not good enough, in my opinion, to be playing in the Champions League. And I think Europa League probably is their level at the moment. So that is still an option on the table, although it's dwindling really as we come towards the end of this season with a couple of games to go. They probably will have to, of course, beat Brentford and, of course, as well beat Leeds on the final day. But it's going to be very, very tough. So we'll see how that plays out in regards to the battle for European football. In regards to Brentford and how I see them approaching the game, I think they'll be free-flowing, they'll play an expressive and expensive band of football, and they can come to win the game. I mean, that's the ultimate big thing. They can come to Tottenham and obviously try to win the game, because I've got to be able to say to you that I expect the mood to be very, very toxic around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see how much that plays into Brentford's hands for sure. Players I'd watch out for, of course, the obvious one, Toney being the main one. But Brentford got some really good players in that team that it'll be unfair for me to really single out loads of the players, because I really feel with Brentford when I watch them, it's a real team performance. So, yeah, in terms of this one for me, I'm going to predict a 1-1. Of course, that's not the result I'd want. Of course, I'd want to sit here and say a Tottenham win. But also with the form that Spurs are in, I can't honestly see Tottenham winning the game. And that really hurts me to say that. But I do expect a strong finish to the season for the Bees. As always, we've loved having you in the Premier League. It's good to see you still involved, and again, being a real established side now. That's the one thing you have to say Brentford have done. They've really established themselves as a Premier League side over these last 12, 18 months. That's full credit to, of course, Thomas Frank, but also the people behind the scenes that don't always get a mention. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1, and, yeah, best of luck for the game, guys.
Nice one there to Ricky from Last Word on Spurs, giving us the lowdown on Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham's strengths, coming back from losing positions, they're very strong. Okay, also creating scoring chances, long shot opportunities, chances using through balls, finishing scoring chances and aerial duels. They're strong in all those areas, which means that, you know, we can't be sleeping whatsoever, lady. However, they're weak at avoiding individual errors, defending counter attacks. defending against long shots, protecting the lead, and they're very weak against defending against skillful players. Okay, so they like to take lots of shots, attack through the middle, attack down the right, attempt through balls often, play in their own half, and they are aggressive. So interesting it's going to be interesting to see how our midfield sort of kind of shapes up for this one, because that's always been where the battle has been. I remember when we played them in the Cup, I think it was, and literally kind of their midfield, you could see it was a class above at some stage, but we've obviously got a lot closer to Tottenham in sort of, ability wise, and as you could tell with the Tottenham fans being afraid that, they're playing Brentford, so obviously the downside of it is obviously we haven't got Norgard because Norgard is injured, but then Janelt, does a good job at times. Also Frank the Tank Onyeka, when he comes on as well, he's been actually showing some really good sparks and some really good things. So, the ability to compete with Tottenham's midfield, which they've got some great players in there, what I'm saying, Højbjerg and people like that, what I'm saying, look, we ain't messing about, they ain't messing about at all. Oliver Skip and people like that, so we have to be on our guard. But Laney, this is as good a time as ever to take on them Spurs, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got to hit them from the get-go. We've seen in the last month or last 6 weeks that they're really shaky from the kickoff. Obviously Newcastle actually tucked right in, didn't they? They got 5 up in no time at all, and at Liverpool they were 2 up, and they let another goal in early on against Wolves last week, and so this won't be lost on us, and we have to win the toss and absolutely just go for the jugular. Hopefully we can scare the life out of them. It's in our abilities to go there and to cause a shock. So yeah, they've got a shaky defence, but they've always got a threat. Son and Kane, and they've got some great players. So it should be a really good game. Bring it on.
It should be a good game, so let's definitely bring that on. Obviously, and we took the thing about the Richarlison, and we mentioned this before. He's going to be playing for them. Didn't have a particularly great game in his last game, but £60 million worth of player, and you said you compare that to Ivan Toney. Okay, yes, he's banned for 8 months, but still, if Richarlison is worth 60 million, then how much is Ivan Toney worth at the top of his game? Plays for England, scores 20 goals a season. Only 2 very good players ahead of him, what I'm saying, in the scoring chance in Haaland and Harry Kane, who will be playing on Saturday, which we haven't talked about much because we know exactly what he's all about, and we know obviously he's been chatted about, what I'm saying, beforehand by Ricky, from Last Word on Spurs. But Laney, this is kind of it's coming. I think the chickens are coming home to roost, and this is the only team that we haven't beaten as yet, I think, is it in London?
It's true.
London?
Yeah, no, it's true. No, we haven't.
Right.
We lost. We lost last time we went there. We got a draw at our place twice, haven't we? So yeah, I mean, we just we were 2-0 up on Boxing Day, and we didn't throw it away, but that game was there for the winning, and I just think, as I said a couple of times now, we go there, and we should go there with confidence.
Go there with confidence. So give us a score, a prediction with your confidence, Laney.
2-1 Brentford.
2-1 to the mighty Bees, and I'm going to go 2-1 Brentford as well. Oh no, I can't go 2-1 Brentford. I'm going to go 3-1 to the Bees, which is everyone thinking, are you all right, Bill? You've been drinking. But let's go for it, actually. Let's just go for it with the confidence, the new team and the new vibe, and also coming back to kind of just give a little bit of support to Ivan Toney, who, listen, he's done some things which has really upset a lot of us because it's let us down, as you said on your podcast there, but we have to just basically suck it up. We've got the punishment and move on. So we're going to show him that we as a family are all backing him and supporting him and moving on in it. So anyway, this is the Besotted Pride of West London podcast. Don't forget to check us out on all good podcast channels and subscribe to us and buy us a beer. besotted.com/beer. Thank you to everyone that's bought us beers. Don't forget, it's an early game on Saturday. It's on the TV, so you can check us out on the TV. Very early for you Americans and all them people watching from all over the world. Great for the Australians because they can watch a game at a normal time. Also, don't forget to like I said to you, the game, we're watching that after the game, prideofwest.london. We'll be doing our podcast, dropping it. It should be live by hopefully about 3:30 in the afternoon while we're sitting in some pub somewhere watching a game. I'm sure we will be doing that as well. But like I said to you, other than that, Laney, thanks very much for the chat. Good old getting off your chest on the Ivan Toney stuff, which is all good, Laney. And we got Laney in the house.
Yes, good afternoon. That's four podcasts this week. That's got to be worth a beer, isn't it?
That's got to be, well, give us a beer. I'll buy us a beer. You know, just give us a beer. I think I need a beer. I think I need a beer after that. But like I said,
I shall see you Saturday, bright and breezy, my friend.
Bright and breezy. So what does they say?
Come on,
you bees.
Nice one, mate. I'm gonna have to run. Lorry's arriving. Right.